Assalamu alaikum everybody. My name is Fatma Mubin and the topic that I'll be presenting today is the societal divisions in the estranged. What comes to your mind when you hear the word society? A group of people living together, right? Well, definitely. But the real question that arises is that are we really living together? Or is the word together merely limited to the definition of society? The society in itself has so many divisions and stratifications within that it becomes difficult to even consider people in it as one. Nobody talks about the divisions and the estranged, the ones who have always felt alienated, and today I choose to speak on them. Our society has been divided on the basis of caste and creed, religion, political views, gender, and even our abilities. Today, I'll be speaking about the divisions that I observe as I grow older and the divisions that have existed since forever. The first one is stratification in the most literal sense. The second one is ethnic divisions. The third one is religious differences. The fourth one is political differences. And the fifth one is feminism versus patriarchy. The stratification based on class is not a new concept. It has been centuries since people have been divided on the basis of the finances they own or their economic activities. This class system exists everywhere, but speaking of Pakistan, we know that the situation and the complexities have worsened with time. The upper class has an income out of which all the expenditures can be easily made, along with a bunch of savings. The middle class is that miserable portion that faces the pressures of moving with the dynamics and fails to save, since their budget is not even enough to buy all the basic necessities. Lastly, the lower class, the most oppressed ones. They may not have the desire of being a part of the rat race, but they do not even know if they'll be able to manage 2 meals a day. That's how miserable their conditions is. Classism is so deeply embedded here that we even have attributed occupations to a certain class. The upper class is likely to be the CEO of multinational companies, while somebody from the lower middle class would not even be able to climb the social ladder. Within F7 in Islamabad, we see how on one side of the street there are luxurious mansions, while on one side there are dim lights, huts, and sheets of cloth used as a division between the multiple congested houses. If this is not depressing inequality, what else can we term it as? And according to the Pakistan Social and Living Measurement Survey, the PSLM 2007, 35% of our population belongs to the middle class. This means that this portion of the population lives their life with an income with almost no savings and even the pressure of adjusting with the dynamics, since they feel the need to move with the trend. They stand in the middle of two extremes. According to the statistics of FPBrecorder.com in 2017, the per capita income of the middle class is 225% of the per capita income of the lower class and 27% of the income of the upper class. This shows justly the exceeding level of income inequality in our country. There's so much of difference between their lifestyles, needs, and desires that it really hurts. The most do not even have their basic necessities and a roof over their head, while the rest roam around in the lavish cars with no care for the poor. Secondly, ethnic divisions. There are so many people in this country, and each one belongs from an ethnicity, a creed, a caste. Unfortunately, hate has been so deeply rooted in our minds for people of the same country just because they belong to a certain ethnic background. This obviously gives rise to the unfortunate cultural division that seriously hurt the country's unity, peace, and harmony. Moreover, this problem in itself has existed since Pakistan came into being, till this day. Soon after the partition of Pakistan, various issues arose among East Pakistan and West Pakistan, which endangered the general nationalism of the country. And East Pakistan wished to become independent because it saw no substitute to it, whereas people of East Wing had developed many criticisms, which were in political, economic, as well as in social segments. In social sector, there were differences in culture and lifestyle, and the first major issue following the partition arose in November of 1947 when Urdu was proposed as a national language. However, Bengalis opposed this idea. Bengali was the standardized language of East Pakistan, while diverse languages were spoken in West Pakistan such as Punjabi, Sindhi, Pashto, Saraiki, Hindko, and Balochi, etc. Bengalis wanted their language to be documented as a national language alongside Urdu, so we see that there was already so much chaos that was further manipulated over the years, and one of the examples is the relationship of the Mahajirs and the Punjabis today. Punjab, being the largest province, was the main power in bureaucracy, the army, and the industry, with 90% of the total shares, which was an unmerited distribution as the Mahajirs were entirely strapped aside in spite of the vast economic development of the country in 1960 during Ayub's era. The shifting of federal capital from Karachi to Islamabad led to major resentment among the Mahajirs, who then began focusing on developing a separate ethnic identity, challenging the country's nationalism. So it is evident that the resentment at the hearts of these groups turns into hatred and massive turmoil. The Punjabi and Mahajir relationship is just one of the examples of the ethnic conflict, and digging in deeper, we also notice how horrible our attitude has been towards the Shidi community, the Baloch, and how we have stereotyped the Pakhtuns. Now, speaking of the treatment of the Balochis, see the amount of discrimination there is, and then the ultimate result of the resentment is the rebellious behavior the Balochi militants have adopted, and that in itself is one of the biggest threats to the nation. Balochistan, which forms 5% of the total population of Pakistan, is the nucleus of natural resources but is not given their deserved share, hence, it still remains a backward and underdeveloped range. Balochistan does not have its own specific quota in bureaucracy and military, but the only obstacle in their own culture. And the NFC awards presented by PPP in the 18th Amendment specify that provinces are to be paid from the revenue generated through the resources, and this allowed other provinces to become independent. However, Balochistan was not given the provincial autonomy, hence they opted for movements such as the BLA, as mentioned above, but these were curbed by government through operations. So their major request is to put an end to military operations and improve the security and survival of the people of Balochistan. Moving on to the further divisions, religion. Don't all religions speak about peace and harmony? They certainly do, but how many of us are really practicing it? Not many, unfortunately. Pakistan was created in the name of Islam, undoubtedly the religion which comes above all. Its teachings come above all, and it's a complete code of conduct. However, we being its followers really ever practice what it preaches. The condition of the minorities in our country says it all. Even in the Sunni sect of Islam, which is the major sect, we find so many divisions, and even though everybody believes in Allah and the finality of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we all have linked ourselves to one of these subdivisions and often face each other with bricks, sticks, and whatnot, trying to prove our superiority over the other fellow group. Let alone divisions within the Sunni sect, we see what our Shia brothers and sisters have to face around Muharram especially. And this was about Islam only. We see that the condition of our minorities is miserable. This is because no social mobility is allowed for the majority. According to New York Times, Lal Chand Malhi, a Pakistani Hindu lawmaker and a member of a parliamentary committee, says that overall religious minorities do not feel safe in Pakistan. Moreover, just recently, an unfortunate event took place at Purana Killa, where after 3 days of the bells being rung at a temple, that too after 74 years, unidentified men attacked the mandir, causing damage to its ongoing renovation. This shows how intolerant we have become to the members of our own state. However, this does not imply that we're all vicious members, but just that some groups have been so exceedingly intolerant to anyone belonging to the minority that they do not let go of a single opportunity to attack the poor souls. In fact, every year here in Pakistan, 1,000 girls from the minorities on an average are abducted, forcibly converted, and married off to Muslim men. This is what needs to end. We must stop targeting these souls if they have done nothing, since the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ treated the minorities in his state with equality as well. And if we are all about Riyasat-e-Madina, then we must be following the true principles laid down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the practices of our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So we see how we are further divided on the basis of religion, where we refuse to even consider minorities as individuals who have all the human rights that have been conferred upon us. This isn't it. We do not fail to split on the basis of political views even, and politics is the dirty game, and this holds no doubt in my opinion. And the leading parties, I don't even have to name them, manipulate the sentiments of people and use them against other parties, and some even do this in the name of Islam, which is the lowest of all strategies. And the three largest parties have large groups in their support that are willing to fight against each other at any time and any place, hence another persistent, determined division. Nobody would even have logical reasons to be supporting the respective parties, but will be ready to combat against the rivals. That in itself is a shame. Last but not the least, feminism versus misogyny. Now, this is another subsequent division that seems to be increasing dramatically, and it is the division on the basis of gender. We know that we have lived in a male-dominant society since forever, but now women have decided to settle for nothing less than what they deserve, which is equality. So there is a clash between the misogynists and the feminists. The feminists wanting to smash patriarchy, while the misogynists are working tirelessly to battle women off. The problem is not considering that women have been put through violence over the years and have been denied their rights. The problem, on the other hand, is challenging culture openly, and women want freedom but have been stereotyped into only asking for freedom when it comes to dressing. However, that is certainly not the case, and the freedom that they're asking for is the freedom from oppression. And observing trends, we have also noticed that certain people try to use Islam against the idea. What they do not understand is that Islam in itself has given so many rights to women. And Islam in itself is the supreme code of conduct. But society is what fails to give women their rights, and that's what the struggle is against. I myself do not choose to side with the extremes, nor do I support anything that goes against my religion, Islam. But if Islam gives women a certain right, why can we not ask the society to give it to us? Women have been subjected to the worst sort of violence, and Pakistani women constitute about half the population of Pakistan. But women are treated mercilessly within their homes by their husbands or the leading males of the families in so many ways, like domestic violence, honor killings, acid attacks, and forced marriages. So, this conflict between the men and women seems to be increasing in the coming years, which is also considered as a big threat to culture, apparently. And another thing that I'd like to mention over here is the third gender and the discrimination that they have to face. The transgenders. Even though they're as human as any one of us, they are treated pitilessly, with all sorts of vile acts thrown at them, be it in their homes or be it on the roads. They have been subjected to harassment and all sorts of harassment. It really is a shame. So we see that there is not one thing that we've been divided on. There are multiple things that act as a factor of division when it comes to our Pakistani society. And it is all because of the element of superiority. We consider ourselves superior to other humans who are literally as human as us, and we do not have any reasons to be considering ourselves better than them in any way. And as we move on, I'd like to emphasize upon the fact that all of these problems have a root, which is the hate towards the poor and the underprivileged, and the idea of superiority embedded in our hearts, minds, and souls. The sidelined are the poor, be it the poor from the minorities, from Islam, from the major ethnic background, but the system is just ruled by few, and these few are the manipulative individuals. Societal divisions are a great threat to the stability of a nation because a car cannot function without four of its wheels. If each wheel goes in a different direction, the upper body will eventually fall out, and it is high time we let colonial effects leave our minds and that we start treating a Saraiki speaking, an Urdu speaking, a Punjabi speaking, a Sindhi, a Pakhtun, and a Baloch with the same respect as we would have given to anybody who flexes their English who has come from abroad. Hence, it is important that we start giving concessions to the less privileged, the poor, the needy, and start being kinder towards the miserable minorities and introduce reforms for their welfare, because it has been really long and nobody deserves to suffer so much. We are all equally human, and here's to hoping for a better and a safer Pakistan and to see it in the exact form our Qaid had envisioned. Thank you.